Good evening, everyone. I'm your storyteller tonight, and I'm here to help you fall asleep with a few unsettling stories to keep you company in the dark. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It really keeps the stories coming. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments below. Now, if you're ready, lie back, get comfortable, and close your eyes. Let's begin. Story 1. I used to work as a night janitor at a regional hospital tucked away in the hills of northern Pennsylvania. It wasn't the kind of place that saw many emergencies. Most of the patients were recovering from surgery or being transferred from smaller clinics for overnight observation. The real action happened during the day, when doctors and nurses swarmed the halls. After midnight, the building took on a different personality. Quiet, still, like it was holding its breath. I was usually alone on my floor. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended around 7. I didn't mind the silence. In fact, I preferred it. My partner, Jerry, worked the wing across from mine, geriatric and long-term recovery. We'd radio each other every couple of hours, just to check in. Most nights passed without incident, just routine mopping, refilling soap dispensers, trash runs. I liked the rhythm of it. Predictable, clean. But one night in late November, something changed. It started with a patient bell ringing in an empty room, room 217. I knew it was empty. It had been for 3 days since the last occupant, a stroke victim, was discharged. I even double-checked the log at the nurse's station. No one was supposed to be in there. Still, the call light blinked red at the hallway junction panel. I stood there for a second, unsure. Maybe Jerry had gone in earlier and forgot to sign the log. Maybe a nurse had placed someone there last minute. It wasn't unheard of. I knocked on the door, more out of habit than anything else. No response. I pushed it open. The bed was made, neatly. No sheets disturbed. No medical equipment beeping. No signs of life. The light above the bed clicked off as I entered, though I hadn't touched the switch. I stood there, scanning the room. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and old linens. Then I noticed the call button on the bed was gone. Just gone. The cord was still there, but the actual button had been ripped off. I backed out slowly and closed the door. Maybe Jerry was playing a joke. He had a weird sense of humor. I radioed him. "You messin' with 217? A pause, then static. "What? No. Why?" The call light went off in there. Room's empty. Buttons missing. "Dude, I haven't touched that room in a week. You okay?" I laughed it off. Said I was probably just tired. He offered to come over and help with trash rounds, but I told him I was fine. The rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. There was no sound, no movement, just this persistent weight in the air, like the building itself was watching me. I kept glancing behind me, expecting to see someone standing there, but there was never anything. Until 4:18 a.m. I was on the service elevator, heading to the basement to dump a bin of bio-waste. The elevator jolted midway down, as if someone had yanked it from below. The lights flickered. It stopped between floors. Then I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Not through the speaker. Inside the elevator. I froze, gripping the bin like a shield. The sound was steady, calm, like someone right behind me exhaling slowly. I turned around. No one. But the air was warm, like someone had just been there. The elevator kicked back to life and descended. When the doors opened, I bolted out, dropped the bin, and took the stairs back up. I didn't finish the rest of my shift. I waited in the break room until dawn. Told my supervisor the elevator jammed. I didn't mention the breathing, or room 217. Jerry quit a few weeks later. He said he started seeing someone standing at the end of his hallway at night, always in the same spot, never moving. I stayed another month, but I never set foot near room 217 again. Not even once. Story 2. Back in 2019, I took a part-time job as the night clerk at a small roadside motel in upstate New York. It was a skeleton crew, just me at the front desk from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and an older guy named Marcus who handled maintenance and laundry. We barely saw each other unless something broke or a guest made a scene. The place mostly hosted truckers and the occasional lost tourist. Nothing fancy, no cameras in the halls. Just one behind the desk and a buzzer that unlocked the front door after hours. I liked the job. It was quiet, gave me time to study, read, zone out. Most nights, I'd only check in 1 or 2 people, then sit in the tiny office behind the counter, sipping vending machine coffee and watching static-filled late-night TV. Then came the woman in room 12. She checked in around 2:30 a.m. during the tail end of a storm. Thin, mid-30s maybe, wearing a damp hoodie and jeans. No luggage. She looked like she'd been walking for miles. I asked if she had a car, and she just said, "No, just passing through." I gave her the key. She didn't smile, just took it and left. I watched the monitor and saw her walk down the hallway, then vanish out of frame. That wasn't unusual. There was a blind spot past the ice machine. At 3:12 a.m., she buzzed the front desk. I jumped a little, startled. I pressed the intercom. Yes? No reply. Just the soft hum of the speaker. I buzzed the door open automatically, assumed it was Marcus or a delivery. Nobody came in. I got up, walked around to the lobby, and looked through the glass. No one. The sidewalk outside was still slick from rain. I checked the monitor again. No movement in the hallway. No one on the feed. Then the buzzer rang again. This time I waited. Didn't press it. Nothing. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. "Front desk," I answered. A voice, quiet, breathy, whispered, "You gave her the wrong room." What? Then a click. I pulled the guest log. Room 12. Name, Amanda Collins. No ID. She said she'd lost it. I had let it slide. I don't know why. Maybe because she looked exhausted. I called the room. 1 ring. 2. No answer. On the monitor, I saw movement. Down the left hallway, near the vending machines. A figure, just standing, still. I leaned closer. The shape was blurry. I assumed it was her. I called Marcus on the walkie. "Can you check the hallway near room 12? No response. I watched the figure. It didn't move, just stood facing the wall. After 10 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the backup key and went to check. The hallway was empty when I got there. Room 12's door was wide open. The lights were off. Inside, the bed was made. No bags. No trace of anyone having ever been in there. I checked the bathroom. Empty. But the room was cold. Like refrigerator cold. My breath fogged up. I left the door open and backed away, heart thudding. Back at the front desk, I pulled up the footage from earlier. Wanted to see her walking in again. But there was nothing. No one entered the motel between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. No Amanda Collins. No woman in a hoodie. I rewound to when I handed her the key. There I was, alone behind the desk, talking to no one, holding out a key to empty air. Marcus didn't answer the radio until sunrise. He said he'd been down in the boiler room and never heard me call. I didn't push it. I worked 3 more nights, then quit without notice. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that room. Room 12. And I wonder who I gave the key to. Story 3. A few years ago, I was working security at a warehouse on the outskirts of Cincinnati. The company specialized in medical supplies. Nothing flashy, just surgical gloves, face masks, IV equipment, but it was high-value inventory, so they kept the place locked down after hours. My shift ran from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. There were 2 of us on duty, but we rotated rounds. One of us stayed in the control room, watching the monitors, while the other did a walk of the perimeter and loading docks. That night, it was my turn on monitors. Danny was doing rounds. The warehouse had 24 cameras, most of them black and white night vision, no audio. The feeds ran side by side on a wall of old CRTs. Sometimes they flickered from interference, especially when it rained. That night was clear though. Still, quiet. Around 2:40 a.m., I noticed something off on camera 16, the far end of aisle B. Near where we stored, someone was standing there. Not walking, not working, just standing. It wasn't Danny. This guy was tall, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, and wearing something like a raincoat, or maybe a long apron. Hard to tell in the grainy feed. I radioed Danny. "Hey, are you in aisle B?" "Nope," he said. "I'm still on the south dock. Why?" "There's someone on 16, standing still." That got his attention. "Describe him." "Tall, facing the wall, not moving." Danny cursed. "I'm heading that way now." I kept my eyes on the screen. The figure hadn't moved an inch, arms at his sides, head tilted slightly down, like he was staring at the floor. Then, just as Danny radioed that he was entering aisle B, the feed glitched. It didn't go black, it skipped, like a few seconds jumped ahead. And when it stabilized, the figure was gone. But not walked away, more like vanished. Like a bad edit, I told Danny, "There's no one here," he said after checking. "No one behind the pallets either. You sure you weren't seeing a shadow?" I saw him clear as day. Danny checked all the doors. Nothing was forced. No alarms tripped. We chalked it up to a trick of the monitors. Maybe an old recording cross-fed into the live feed. That kind of thing had happened before. I tried to brush it off. But then, at 3:12 a.m., camera 9 blinked. That one faces the small break room near the north entrance. The light inside was off, but I saw movement. A flicker of a hand, long fingers, just for a second, then gone. I radioed Danny again. "Break room, you there?" "No, I'm in the office." "Why?" "There's someone inside, I think." He rushed over. Room was empty, nothing disturbed. Door was locked. But when he came back, he looked pale. "I heard something," he said, like someone whispering. But it stopped when I opened the door. We spent the rest of the night in the control room. Lights on. Neither of us moved from our chairs. At the end of the shift, I checked the logs. Motion detectors on the floor were blank. But I noticed something I hadn't before. At 2:38 a.m., just before I saw the figure in aisle B, a code had been entered at the staff side door. An old badge ID, one that had been deactivated over a year ago. The name, Jacob Rowe. He was the guy I replaced, found dead in his apartment 3 days after he quit. Heart failure, or so they said. I still have no explanation, just a question that stays with me. Who, or what, still walks that warehouse? Story 4. For a short time, I worked the night shift at a 24-hour gas station just off a rural highway in West Texas. It was the kind of place truckers pulled into for coffee, smokes, and a few minutes of warmth before disappearing into the dark again. My shift was from midnight to 8 a.m., and usually dead quiet after 2. Sometimes, I wouldn't see a single person for hours. I actually liked that. Gave me time to think, clean, just exist in the silence. The station had those buzzing overhead fluorescents, the kind that hum just loud enough to make your head throb if you sit in it too long. There was a radio behind the counter, but the signal cut out a lot. Usually just static with a ghost of country music bleeding through. It started one night around 3:20 a.m. I was sweeping near the coffee counter when I noticed something strange outside. A car, an old Lincoln, pale blue, was parked at pump 3. Lights off, engine running. No one got out. I waited a minute. Nothing. Walked to the door, squinted through the glass. Still no one. Just the engine idling, headlights dimmed like the battery was dying. Then the horn blared, short and sudden. I jumped and knocked over a stack of chip bags. But when I looked again, the car was gone. No taillights, no tire marks, just an empty lot. I went outside, looked around. Highway was quiet. No sound but the wind scraping through dry weeds. When I went back inside, the radio was on, full volume. Country music, clear as day. I hadn't touched it. I turned it off. At 4:10 a.m., I was restocking the drink fridge when I saw movement on the monitors. Someone was standing in aisle 4, the cleaning supplies section. I hadn't heard the bell. The chime always went off when someone entered. I checked the front. Door was closed, still locked. No sign of anyone. I looked again. Monitor showed the figure still standing there. Back turned to the camera, wearing a long jacket, maybe denim. I hesitated. "Hello?" I called. No answer. I rounded the corner fast, half hoping it was a customer playing a prank, or maybe a drunk wandered in. But the aisle was empty. I swear, I felt something brush past me as I walked through, like wind in a place that shouldn't have any. The smell of something faintly metallic lingered in the air. Not blood, not rust, more like old coins. Back behind the counter, I rewound the footage. Nothing. No car, no figure, no one ever entered. But I saw myself, clearly, staring at the monitor, talking to someone who wasn't there. And then I saw something else, just for a second, before the feed glitched. A face in the reflection of the cooler door behind me, staring directly at me, mouth open like it was mid-scream. But I never heard anything. I finished the shift with the lights on full blast, didn't leave the counter, didn't restock, just watched the clock. At 7:58 a.m., I looked outside. The Lincoln was back, parked in the exact same spot. Engine off now, windows rolled down, but no one inside. I walked out to check. Maybe it had just been left there. But by the time I crossed the lot, it was gone again. No sound, no engine starting, just gone. I quit that job the next day. Sometimes, when I'm driving late and pass an old gas station, I glance at the pumps and wonder if that Lincoln's still out there, waiting. Story 5. During my final year of college, I worked nights at the campus library. It closed at midnight, but staff stayed until 3 a.m. for shelving and internal audits. The building was old, 1930s brick and creaking floors. The top floor was sealed due to asbestos, and the basement smelled like mildew no matter how much air freshener we used. That week, I worked with Elliot, a quiet guy who cataloged upstairs, while I handled the main level and basement. One night, around 1:45 a.m., I took the stairs down. Elevator was out again. The stairwell was always colder, tucked behind a disused archive room. As I reached the bottom, the overhead lights flickered, then held steady. I stepped into the basement and stopped. The return cart was no longer by the desk. It sat partway down the aisle, like someone had started to push it and walked away. I called out to Elliot. No answer, just the low hum of the lights. I wheeled the cart back, then spotted a book on the floor nearby. It wasn't ours. No tag, no barcode. Just a cracked leather cover and brittle yellow pages. Most were blank. All but one near the center. In tiny, spidery handwriting, "He walks when you're not looking." I slammed the book shut and pushed it aside. Probably a prank. Maybe something left by an art student. Then I heard a dragging sound, soft and steady, like fabric brushing tile. I turned. Nothing, but the air had thickened. Felt wrong, like static in my lungs. I pushed the cart quickly. As I passed the last aisle, I saw a shadow on the wall. Not mine. Taller, thinner. It moved just slightly out of sync with me, lagging half a second behind. I stopped. The shadow froze. I stepped back. The shadow hesitated, then snapped back in line with me. That was enough. I ran. I rushed up the stairs. Halfway up, I heard a whisper. It said my name. Not urgent, not loud, just a breath behind my ear. I didn't look back. At the top, I slammed the door shut and locked it. Elliot was upstairs, shelving DVDs like nothing was wrong. I asked if he'd been in the basement. He shook his head. "Didn't want to go down there alone," he said. I didn't tell him what I saw, just helped finish closing. As we locked the main entrance, I glanced back toward the reference section. High on the wall, there was a small window, maybe a foot wide, too high for anyone to reach. Just before the lights went out, I saw a face there, not pressed to the glass, just present, watching, pale and still. Gone a second later. I said nothing. Didn't sleep that morning. I quit 2 days later. Told the supervisor I had a morning schedule conflict. He didn't ask questions. But even now, when I pass that library on the way to visit campus, I feel it. That same weight in the air near the basement windows. Like something's still there. Still waiting. Still watching. Still walking when you're not looking. Story 6. In 2021, after losing my job during the second lockdown, I picked up overnight cleaning work in a downtown office complex. The building had been mostly abandoned since the company went remote, though a skeleton IT crew still handled server maintenance, and the place needed weekly cleaning. My shift ran 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. every 3 days, covering floors 7 through 12. The work was dull but easy. Vacuum carpets, wipe desks, clean break rooms no one touched. Lights stayed off unless manually flipped, so each floor existed in its own shadowed stillness. Empty. Isolated. I always started at floor 12 and worked my way down. One night, in December, a storm knocked out most of the streetlights outside, making the building feel sealed off from the world. Only the emergency hallway strips and faint red glow of exit signs lit the way. Around 1:30 a.m., I was on floor 9, vacuuming by a row of glass-walled offices, when I saw it. Someone inside the conference room, still facing the door. I hadn't heard the elevator. No footsteps. I shut off the vacuum. The silhouette remained completely still behind the frosted glass. I stepped forward slowly. "Hello?" I said. "The building's closed." No response. Closer now, I could make out a tall build, maybe a suit, but the glass distorted the face. Then the lights flickered, just once. When they came back on, the room was empty. I stood frozen. No sound. No doors had opened. I searched every cubicle, each closet. Nothing. Back at the elevator, I pressed the call button. It stayed dead. I took the stairwell to floor 8. The air dropped noticeably, probably the HVAC again. But it didn't feel mechanical. It felt like someone had just been there. Near the supply closet, I saw something written in the dust on the wall. "You were too loud." I stood there, stomach knotting. I hadn't said anything except a hello and used the vacuum. I wiped the words away, thinking maybe they'd been there all along. I worked in silence, unnerved. When I finally moved to the stairwell again, I glanced through the narrow window that overlooked the central shaft. That's when I saw it. A person on the opposite wall, inside the shaft. Head bowed, pressed against the concrete. There was no access in, just smooth walls and empty space. I stared for a full minute. The figure didn't move, didn't acknowledge me. I went down to floor 7 and looked through the next window. Gone. I rushed through the rest of the work and left early, without checking out. The agency didn't ask questions. Maybe they already knew. I never went back. I don't talk about it. But whenever I pass tall glass buildings downtown, I can't help but look up. And sometimes, high in those dark windows, I see something, still, silent, watching. And I think, maybe it's waiting for the noise to start again.